Big news on the recruiting front with Liam McNeeley, one of the top prospects in the 2024 class. It is down to IU and Kansas in his recruitment. We'll get you the latest news on Tuesday and let you know where the Hoosiers stand in this one.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. This is Locked On Hoosiers, your one and only daily one-stop shop for everything IU athletics. I'm your host, as always, Jacob. Appreciate you guys making us your first listen, wherever it may be from. YouTube, Spotify. You guys know the deal. You know how much we appreciate your support. Shout out to our sponsor of today's episode, GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I'll get this pulled up so we can look at some of the offers later on in the episode for the IU game this weekend. Before we dive into IU football, though, big IU basketball recruiting news. If it's not a Wednesday and we're talking IU basketball recruiting, that means it's something substantial, and this certainly is. I debated holding it for our Recruiting Wednesday show, but this one felt noteworthy as Liam McNeeley is down to IU and Kansas in his recruitment. It's looked that way for a while, but McNeeley is from Texas. At one point, Texas was seen a bit as maybe not a front runner, but certainly a team near the front. But the coaching change, that whole situation going on there, really dropped them down and eventually dropped them out of the race. Kansas has kind of replaced them and really stormed up in this competition, while the Hoosiers have remained at the very top from the onset. On Tuesday, McNeeley kind of made obvious, I guess, or made clear what a lot of people had assumed, is that it's down to IU and Kansas. Coincidentally, and earnestly, purely coincidentally, this is not a decision McNeeley made on Tuesday. The visit being canceled had been something that had been a decision that had been made. It's just really good optics that Indiana had 4 coaches at Montverde on Tuesday, including Mike Woodson, along with Kenya Hunter, Yazir Roseman, and Brian Walsh, to watch the Montverde practice. It's not just McNeeley, obviously, that they're looking at. Derek Queen, Curtis Givens, both remain guys they're focused on, and I'm sure there are other younger players at Montverde that they're focused on as well. So it's always, I'm sure, a busy stop with them if they stop at Montverde. So it certainly is good news for the Hoosiers. Indiana fans should feel really good about this, because Indiana has been a team either at the very top or near the very top with McNeeley's recruitment for a while. And so the fact that it's down to just 2 schools means less competition overall for the Hoosiers, but it is a really big one that Indiana is fighting in McNeeley, a team that IU is starting to get a bit of a recruiting rivalry with, but Kansas has been there a couple of times fighting the Hoosiers for prospects. They landed Badunga. They weren't really fighting Indiana for that one, but they came in and snatched someone from Indiana. It's Mbako that the Hoosiers landed over Kansas that was the notable one, but we'll see if Mike Woodson versus Bill Self, if Woody can come out in front again. Kansas might have handled IU on the court, but if Woodson is able to land this commitment, then he would have the overall advantage in this one heading into the game later this December. McNeeley, for those who might be unaware, who might have forgotten, he's listed now as a number 15 recruit on 247 Sports. They updated their recruit rankings within the last week or so, maybe a little bit more than that. Small forward, 6'7", 190 pounds, 5-star recruit. do-it-all, small forward, wing type of player that, I mean, we've seen that's what Indiana wants to get, those wings that can do everything. McNeeley is kind of the quintessential version of that. I think that's exactly the type of player Indiana wants, so that's why they've been going after him so hard. It's a really big recruitment. He has said, I believe in the past, I'm almost certain he has said he wants to make his decision before Montverde game start, before the season starts. So this is probably something that is not going to be drawn out for a whole lot longer. I don't know specifically that a decision is looming or anything like that, but this is not something that's going to take a whole lot longer before we get a answer on. So obviously McNeeley was on campus a little over a week ago for his visit in Bloomington. Texas was going to be his last official visit until he canceled it. Texas is out of the picture. It's IU and Kansas. We'll keep you updated on anything that happens. At this point, if there's any other news on Liam McNeeley, it's that he's committed somewhere. So be sure you're following us on Twitter, following us or subscribing to us on YouTube, because when he commits, most likely we're going to go to a live show and immediately go live and talk about that commitment. So if you guys want to be a part of that discussion, hopefully part of that celebration, be sure you're following on Twitter or X, whatever they want to call it now. Subscribed on YouTube as well. Let's talk some IU football, and specifically we're going to talk Tayven Jackson the rest of this podcast, because a lot of interesting things have happened. He's going to treat his offensive line, but before we get to that, I want to talk about whether he's already kind of done enough to be the quarterback the rest of the season. We'll discuss that here in a moment. First, let's talk about FanDuel. You guys know how much we love FanDuel around here, and you can snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. It's obviously not only the NFL they have college football as well, and the Hoosiers are going to head into this weekend as 16.5-point favorites against Akron. This is a really bad Akron team. We'll talk about them later in the week on Thursday, but this is a really bad Akron team. So the Hoosiers are going to be heavy favorites. Over under a 44.5. IU's offense is not scoring at a good rate. Their defense is not allowing many points. So it's going to be some low over-unders this season. FanDuel has all those odds for you guys. Place that $5 bet. No matter if it's right, wrong, IU covers, they score a bunch of points, whatever it is, you will get those $200 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Shout out to you guys for continuing to make us your first listen. Also, I hope you guys have been tuning into college football kickoff live each Friday. Locked On goes live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. They talk the rivalries. They talk the big conference playoff or the conference matchups, the playoff implications, whatever it may be. They have the in-depth analysis that only Locked On can provide. So be sure you guys are catching them. Any Locked On College YouTube channel, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. Locked On College Football Kickoff live. Let's talk Tayven Jackson. I want to talk about how quickly we're going to need to make a decision on him with regards to Dexter Williams. So that was kind of the big thing at the beginning of the season, is that whoever was named the starting quarterback was going to have a pretty short runway here before a decision was going to have to be made about them versus Dexter Williams. Week 1 was atrocious. Neither of them looked good. I think it's becoming pretty clear that IU's coaching staff is as much to blame for that as anyone, with a super uber conservative play style or play calling. The last 2 weeks, Tayven has looked fantastic. The majority of the last 2 weeks, I should say. Against Indiana State, it came with a huge asterisk that's Indiana State. Against Louisville, there is no asterisk. And I would even argue that in the first half, he still looked good. Rewatching the game earlier this week, or I rewatched it on Sunday, watching it live, I thought nobody played well in that first half, which a lot of people didn't. Tayven, I don't think, was one of them. He had a couple throws off target that were a little bit high, but I didn't think he played poorly. He was just kind of bang average, which bang average was like the best player IU had in the first half. The second half, he was remarkable. That's the best quarterback performance, especially given the opponent an IU quarterback has had since, Mike Penix versus Ohio State. Like, I would really have to sit and think about it. I know Bazelak had some big yardage games, but they were coming against like Western Kentucky and things like that. That's a pretty good Louisville team that Tayven was absolutely dicing up in the second half on Saturday. So the discussion probably needs to start to be had. Who should be the starting quarterback? I know it's early. I don't want this to be seen as a knee-jerk reaction, though. The coaching staff isn't going to have much more of a sample size to work with than what we have now. Dexter Williams, we heard, was recovering rapidly, ahead of schedule, and that he was already expected to be back at some point this season. If he's ahead of schedule, that means that we're getting pretty close to a time when he is going to be available. Now, there was an interesting question posed on a show last week. I'm trying to pull it up here. That's why the screen went a little dark. Andy Dodo, shout out to him if he's watching. When we did our show on and talked about Michael Penix, which if you guys didn't hear us talk about that last week, go listen to that show, or at least that part. Michael Penix gave a lot of revealing information about IU and where things went wrong his final season, and didn't paint IU in a great light. And a lot of it was because his doctor did not clear him before the 2021 season started. The doctor that did the surgery did not clear him. Somebody did, assuming IU's doctors, so that he could be ready to play. And he asked a very interesting question that he says, does that make you question Dexter's recovery timeline? That's not something I had thought about before he mentioned it. It kind of does. It's a really great point. That is a question that we're not going to have an answer to. It's one of those things that we're not going to know until he's out there. But it does raise some concerns about his recovery timeline. What I think Tayven playing this well does do is not put any sense of urgency on Dexter coming back. If IU was fluttering and was struggling and the quarterbacks looked awful, there would be the urge as soon as Dexter's healthy to throw him back out there. It doesn't do anybody any good, and it adds pressure to Dexter. There's not a lot of good that can come out of that. Tayven now, if we look at the last 8 quarters, at least 6 of them, he's been really good. Actually, I guess it's 5 because he probably didn't play the fourth quarter against Indiana State. So of the last 7 quarters he's played, 5 of them he's looked tremendous, I would say. Granted, again, I know it's a competition, but the people that have been in front of him, he has looked great against. So what more would he need to do? I'm not sure. Again, Akron's really bad. So even if he comes out, and I anticipate he'll have a good game, you're going to have the caveat it's Akron. But again, if he's just continually impressing, no matter who's in front of him, he's a redshirt freshman. He hasn't done this before. Right now, I would say you just stick with Tayven. You can bring Dexter Williams along. Maybe there's some types of plays you can throw him in. I really don't like using 2 quarterbacks in a game, even if it's like wildcat snaps or things like that. Think back to when it was Xander Diamont and Nate. I'm blanking on his last name. Surf and Turf was the nickname we gave him. You were using like 3 quarterbacks at a time during then. I don't love those packages, but I could understand using it to get Dexter back on the field and give him a chance to work his way back. But regardless, Tayven has so far done absolutely everything he needs to win the job over Brennan Sorsby, and now to solidify his spot versus Dexter Williams. It's going to be interesting to see how the team brings along Dexter Williams in the coming weeks. Tayven needs to keep performing at this level, but he's making it a difficult decision. And he's continued to look fantastic. If he plays like he did in that second half against Louisville, there's no decision to be made. Tayven's the guy. We'll see if that continues, but it is a very interesting decision that is coming, especially for a coaching staff that heading into the game against Indiana State, maybe 10 days ago, wasn't even necessarily sold on Tayven being the guy. Is that going to play into that decision as well? We'll see, but it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks at that quarterback position because Tayven looks special. Greg Doyle wrote an article in the Indy Star comparing him to Michael Penix. Is that fair? A little bit too early? That was kind of my thought, but I think he can potentially have that type of impact at Indiana if Michael Penix is a Heisman candidate. I don't want to overreact too much to a Louisville game and an Indiana State game, but for a redshirt freshman to play like he did, I think Tayven's a special talent. What we've also learned is he's a really good leader who is a really good teammate as well. We're going to talk about a story. He's offering some free food to some of his teammates. We'll tell you a little bit about that story and on a little bit of a fun note on this one. Before we talk about that, our sponsor today over at the GameTime app. The best part about the GameTime app, you guys hear me say it all the time, is that you can see where your seats are at just from the app. I have the Akron game pulled up, and I can see all over the field. I would try to show you, but it's not going to work on this screen. All over the field, you can see where your tickets are going to be and what your seat is going to look like. Easily the best part about GameTime and why you guys should be using it. They have flash deals as well. Tickets as cheap as $8 to the Akron game this weekend. Forget planning months in advance. GameTime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The GameTime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code with LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So Tayven spoke on Monday and revealed something interesting. He is treating his offensive line to dinner this week. That man has gotten the bag with NIL if he's willing to open up the wallet to take his offensive line to dinner. Why? They're not sacking. Nobody's sacking Tayven Jackson. It's the reward he is offering those guys for keeping him upright and keeping him off the ground, which, again, IU struggled in run blocking this past week against Louisville. They haven't really struggled at all this year in pass blocking. It helps that Tayven has some mobility and can escape the pocket and extend plays, but they've done a really, really, really good job of protecting him throughout this season. So he's going to take him out to eat. The early favorite, he said, is Texas Roadhouse, which is hilarious. That is the early favorite. That's where the offensive line apparently wants to go. But apparently Janko's Little Zagreb and Malibu Grill are options on the table. At some point this week, though, if you're at one of those restaurants, probably Texas Roadhouse, you might see a whole lot of offensive linemen come in, led by Tayven Jackson. He had a very interesting quote. Quote, I wasn't here last year, but the talk in the facility is that it's a huge improvement from last year. When guys do that, you got to reward it. That comes with leadership. Boy, you could not script a better quote for him to give to just have everybody buy in. Perfect. He wasn't here. He doesn't know what it looks like. He knows it's much, much better than what it was. I'm going to reward my guys for that. Who wouldn't want him to be the leader of this team? That is a red shirt freshman saying those types of things. My, oh my, wise beyond his years and incredible gesture, obviously. But more than that, you're going to have guys standing up for you, playing hard for you, protecting you, especially when it comes to the offensive line. If this is what you're willing to do for him, more than just like, hey, I'm going to reward you if you help me, just acknowledging what they're doing, especially with offensive linemen never really get the acknowledgement that they deserve. You take those guys out for dinner for some steaks, they're going to get the acknowledgement. And he said there's no limit on plates. They can order as much as they want. You're not going to find a better teammate than that. So far this season, the offensive line has only allowed 2 sacks, and none of them were on Saturday. I'm not even certain that how many of those were against Tayven. I would have to go back and look to see if it was Tayven that's been sacked both of those times. But overall, the offensive line has been fantastic. That's tied for 12th out of 133 FBS teams in terms of fewest sacks allowed. It's tied for 3rd in the Big Ten. Only Michigan and stunningly Rutgers are higher in terms of sacks allowed or fewest sacks allowed. Tom Allen spoke about Tayven and his leadership. Quote, I would say since I've been here, he has the potential to be the best verbal leader we've had at that position in all my years here, and I expect him to be that way. I think it comes to him in a very natural way, and so that's a thing. I want that guy to be verbal. Yeah, I mean, look, Tayven has always had a certain, since he's gotten here, I should say, he's always had a certain poise, a certain, I don't even know, a confidence, not necessarily any kind of swagger, but a certain just smoothness kind of to him. He looks like a guy who is a leader, who looks like a QB1. He's played and earned that position, and just absolutely great stuff from him so far. I've been blown away. I was already really impressed with him on the field. He's doing and saying all of the right things off the field. How could you not love him? Just tremendous stuff from him. So it was a fun little story I thought we could end the episode on. Thanks as always, guys, for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every single day. We'll have a Recruiting Wednesday show tomorrow. Even though we talked about Liam McNeeley, there's some other stuff to talk about, so we'll have more to discuss. Tomorrow, a couple new names IU has offered. Mike Woodson is making some visits. Some guys are coming to campus. And another women's basketball visit, another prominent recruit was on campus. So we'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow on that front. We'll preview Akron on Thursday, get you all the last-minute info for the game on Friday. On Sunday, we're going to have a live show. I'm not going to do a live show Saturday at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Sunday afternoon, we're going to do a live show. I'll repeat it later this week, but be ready for that. Follow us on Twitter if you haven't already. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave that rating and review. All of that great stuff. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Hope you all have a fantastic day. Most importantly, LEO.